Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today's Tech Session podcast, Modern Infrastructure Edition. I'll be your host today, Christian Rowland, SVP of our Modern Infrastructure Group at E360. Today, the topic is going to be a meaty one. We're going to talk about navigating the world of IT where VMware is owned by Broadcom. And boy, what a meaty topic this is. So today, I am also joined by Devon Arsenault. He is one of our E360 principal architects, and quite frankly, one of the guys that I would go to for advice if I was building a data center. So, Devon, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day, and hope you're able to get into some of these exciting topics with me.
I'm excited to be here, Christian.
Fantastic. Well, let's get right into it. So, what happened? So, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 2023, Broadcom purchased VMware and was waiting quite a number of months for regulatory approval, and we seemingly got that in November. And since November, man, there have been a lot of changes that have been announced. VMware has, basically moved all of their subscriptions to SaaS or moved to a subscription-based model, terminated their perpetual licensing. They've pre-packaged a number of their offerings. That means that they've stopped selling individualized products in many cases. This is kind of really upended, I think, some of our customers and the conversations they've been having. And I will tell you that this is a very, very live topic, even after just the past couple of days. We're recording this in April of 2024 here. And two things that have occurred most recently, which was VMware has extended or has agreed to extend support for some of the VMware perpetual licenses, in and of the fact that they will provide security updates, which is quite interesting. That was a very recent move. And, as of about last Friday, maybe Wednesday-ish, EU regulators are looking to get involved here from an antitrust perspective and take some inspection behind the terms and conditions and changes. So, Devon, what's your take on all of this? And quite frankly, what are customers' perceptions when they just hear these changes?
Well, I got to tell you, in our conversations with clients, I think there's a lot of apprehension over what these changes actually entail. Certainly, the early conversations we were having with clients, there wasn't a lot of detail as to what this was going to cost our clients going forward. So clients were in the dark on that, and I think the knee-jerk reaction with a lot of the people we've talked to is, geez, let's just switch hypervisors. Let's look at other options. I think if I were to really steer the conversation, though, it's really to take your time and plan this out, because this could be an opportunity to actually modernize what you're doing in the infrastructure. I think we've gotten a little bit lazy as IT infrastructure guys. You just kind of plug in VMware, and there's all the tools that kind of operate with it, and we've just been kind of going along for the last 10 years doing that. And there's a lot of assumptions, not just with the infrastructure teams, but also with the application teams, security teams, networking teams, where VMware is assumed. So you don't want to just knee-jerk, just rip VMware out from underneath everything that you're doing without really taking a look at where all the dependencies are. So,
yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I want to start with we'll go with a couple of the questions that demystify some of the FUD versus fact here. When this announcement was first made, we talk about 56 plus products and SKUs that were abandoned or completely destroyed by VMware.
Yeah.
Can you shed some light onto that for the
Well,
audience?
I think really what's happened here, guys, is a la carte's gone away. Uh, there's been a push with Broadcom to simplify the offering. And for a majority of our clients, we're really looking at two different SKUs that everyone's going to fall under. There's what's called their VMware Cloud Foundation product, which is a majority of those a la carte offerings that were a part of the old VMware. So anything that has to do with operations, ARIA is involved. If you're doing containers, Tanzu, um, as well as some of the hybrid cloud offerings. So SDDC for doing VMware both in the cloud and on-prem. Um, even down to kind of the support offerings, their SRE support offering, where they give you engineering support to build out your infrastructure. Um, the kind of the traditional data center SKU would be the VMware vSphere Foundation SKU, and what that includes is really vSAN, your hypervisor, ESXi, Enterprise Plus, vCenter, uh, again, Tanzu, and kind of the ARIA standard suite. ARIA, if you don't know, it's a rebranding of VROPS, the old VROPS. So those are the two SKUs you're looking at. It's take it or leave it. You can't add or remove different products, so you're going to fall under one or the other, and that's really what the pricing is going to include. Technically, they've dropped the price on the hypervisor, and they've dropped the price on a number of these products as well. Unfortunately, you may be paying for a product now that you don't currently use. So that's where some of the price increase starts to come in.
And I think that unpacks perfectly from a standpoint of customers are seeing 2x, 3x price
Mhm.
hikes. The reason for that is, generally speaking, is you're buying packages of software, you're buying bundles of software. And if you're already a VMware shop and you're using and capitalizing on that particular investment, then your price hikes in many instances are going to be non-existent, if maybe you would even see a reduction in some
Mhm.
cases based upon the way that the software's been provisioned in these
Mhm.
packages. But most oftentimes we see a lot of customers that are a la carte. um, what if what if I already own VMware in this perpetual method? I've already bought my licenses and subscriptions, and I have my support, and sure, I have a maintenance window coming up, but I'm a perpetual license holder of VMware. What now?
Perpetual, you own the software. It's not going to just shut off the day your support ends. Um, Again, they've made some announcements about doing some security patches going forward with perpetual licenses. What does not renew and what you can't purchase today is additional perpetual licenses. And their support and subscription offerings, they are not renewing those going forward. So you're going to fall under this new uh, this new licensing scheme and these new VMware SKUs.
How does this perpetual decision impact things like VxRail and other competitive offerings? How do you think? I think it's still probably a little bit too early to know definitively what the impact is. I think there's
Yeah,
still some
yeah,
negotiation going on behind the scenes.
yeah. Right now, they've pulled OEM licensing, so I think that's the biggest change. How that's going to play out for products like VxRail still to be determined.
Very good. Let's talk a little bit about the overall innovation from VMware. I mean, Broadcom has gone through and they've bought. This isn't their first technology acquisition. I'll put it that way. They've had a number of technology acquisitions over the years. some of those technology acquisitions maybe have seemingly been more financial models than necessarily innovation drivers. What is your overall perception about Broadcom and their forward-looking advancement of the technology and moving to this cloud and SaaS infrastructure? You think it's an acquisition that's going to drive innovation looking forward?
I mean, that's hard to say, Christian. We'd have to have our crystal ball. Certainly, Broadcom has got a history of their acquisitions and what they've done with them, and they do like to monetize. I think they've even announced, with some of uh, their filings with Wall Street, that they're looking to grow revenues from VMware from about, I think it's about 4.5 billion to about 8.4 billion over the next 3 years. So there is an expectation that they're going to be able to monetize this acquisition. Here's the deal. VMware today, it's still probably it's the best alternative out there for a majority of workloads. So does that mean it will be 3 years from now? Who knows? Certainly with this acquisition, we do expect that there's going to be some competitors that may start to work their way back into um, into uh, the server virtualization infrastructure play. So again, Hyper-V, Microsoft hasn't done any updates on that for years, but they are talking about doing some updates. They've also got their hyper-converged solution, their Azure stack that they're working on. We're seeing stuff with Zen. Used to be a fairly big play with Citrix, that Citrix is allowed to go back to open source. And there's talk that they're going to bring that back in and start doing some development with that. Um, Obviously, Nutanix has had a hypervisor offering out there. It's kind of tied to their HCI stack, their software-defined storage stack, but they're potentially they could be releasing that hypervisor as a standalone product. So it's hard to say what's going to happen in the future. But today, the reality is VMware's the 800-pound gorilla. It's got a great feature set. It works for most workloads. It's got a great ecosystem around it, and so you have to do your planning today based on that.
It's a great point that you brought up. You talk about the ecosystem around it, right? And most customers today operate a great number of production workloads on
Mhm.
VMware. Simply moving off of VMware could have a negative impact to the overall application, to the application's supportability in the future from a third-party manufacturer. There are a number of considerations when you start thinking about, what are my options moving forward?
Absolutely, and certainly if you're looking to just straight kick the can and move to another hypervisor, there's obviously components of the ecosystem. Um, there's hardware support. There's application support around your solution. Um, there's compliance. There's compliance things that you need to. Some workloads may need a certain security accreditation that may not be available with certain
Mhm.
hypervisor platforms. Um, You've got your operations, your backup and recovery, your monitoring. All that stuff changes when you start jumping hypervisors. Disaster recovery. How are you going to handle incident response? How are you going to handle long-term support? Say you're going with an open source solution. So there's a lot of things to consider when you're looking to just swap out a hypervisor. That takes some planning.
Absolutely. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of one of the customers that we talk to each and every day. There's a process that we go through. We've developed internally kind of a workshop format, which we can obviously offer to any prospect or inquiries. But if I'm that client, what are some of the things that I need to be thinking about as I go through and I navigate this landscape, right? You talked about, the packaging, and you've talked about some of the tech things. Sounds like there's some third party compatibility. How do you kind of package this into, there's kind of the business side of it, which is, I think, the short term financial implications that, obviously executives are going to be facing. And then there's the whole technology side of it, which is, where are we going today, and how are we going to transition potentially to something else in the future, and or maybe capitalize or monetize on the stack.
So, so that's a loaded question, Christian. And honestly, it kind of depends on how much runway the client has before they have to make a decision. Um, if there's not a lot of time before your renewal is up, I think our recommendation right now is really to just kind of kick the can, go with a short term renewal, try to reduce the footprint as much as possible, have a very good idea of what feature set that you're using and what you need to use, because certainly you don't want to go with the VMware Cloud Foundation or the most expensive package if you're not using any of those features. Um, but if you can buy time, this is your opportunity to really go workload by workload and determine where the best place for that workload to reside. And it's an opportunity to really rethink the architecture of the entire IT infrastructure. So, an example. Um, there are certain applications that maybe lend themselves to software as a service. I think a majority of our clients at this point have moved their exchange to a software as a service offering as opposed to keeping it on prem. So that's an example of reducing footprint. There are other applications that would fall under that category. Um, some of your newer applications maybe lend themselves to an application modernization. Instead of just sticking them on a VM, maybe we're talking about containers. Maybe we're talking about putting those out on the cloud, or even doing some sort of hybrid offering where you can run containers on prem for certain things, and out on the cloud if you need to to scale it quickly. Um, uh, there are uh, there are options if you're looking to um, really look to more of an OpEx model to just infrastructure as a service. So move to one of the public clouds and just move your server virtualization workloads out there. So there are ways of reducing your VMware footprint, even if you don't completely get off of VMware. Um, there are some workloads that obviously need to stay on prem. So there are instances where we're dealing with things like latency. You need it to perform very well. It's got to stay close to the client. Probably have to leave those things on prem. There are things with compliance. I need my data. I need it in my data center. I can't have it out in a public cloud. So there are certain instances where it does lend itself to staying on prem, and you can start looking at hypervisor solutions that support those particular workloads. But I think the most important thing is to look at it from a workload to workload perspective, which requires time. It's not something you can do quickly.
No, it's a great point of, there are real world problems, primarily being the financial problem, first and foremost, right? Which is the one that's going to hit everyone come renewal
Mhm.
time. And I think the obviously the knee jerk there is, well, we're gonna find something else, because in the tech world we're used to finding the bigger, better, faster, cheaper option. And in the world of hypervisors, the options really are pretty limited, and with the integration they have with third parties, etc. um and but I hear the positive message here, right? Instead of the sensationalizing the issue, it's more about, number one, reevaluating your workloads, making sure that the workload is placed in the right place, in the right on-prem, off-prem? Does the application need to be modernized? There's probably a chance for some optimization when it comes down to um, overall workload placement and the licensing that you need, right? Reducing that footprint, as you called out, that likely are the knee-jerk reaction of, hey, get off of it, move away, may not be the right thing to do. How do customers start this process? I mean, you said it takes time. It's long and arduous sometimes. When you think about the applications, you have everything from production applications to in-house development. How do you systematically go through that?
Yeah. So, one of the key things is getting a task force together, probably internally. That this is not an infrastructure or an operations team discussion that can be done in a vacuum. This is a discussion that needs to bring in, vendor management. Needs to bring in your security teams and your compliance teams, your application teams. Again, probably have some dependencies on VMware that you may not even be aware of. And when you're talking about something that big, you really need executive sponsorship as well. So it's a workshop type thing where you need to get all the people in the room, and you need to start, identifying your applications, identifying your critical business critical applications, and work on those first, and really set some scope around requirements for those particular applications. I think the most important thing that you can do as you're going through these applications is, if you have that scope and requirements, is to eliminate options as quickly as possible. It gets very easy to get hung up on all of the different options that are out there, and waste a lot of time going down rabbit holes that you didn't have to go down. So defining your requirements for your applications, and then being very strict as you evaluate different options will save you a lot of time in the long run.
Fantastic. And kind of that philosophy that you're talking about, that's something that you can find in our workshop, right? So if you're going to e360.com/VMware dash workshop, you'll be able to find out a little bit more about that offering, about taking that holistic approach, learn how we can go through and evaluate workload by workload, and really take into account the business and the technical decisions that go along with that.
Yeah, that workshop, it's an important first step. It's a first step. And from that workshop, we can get our resources on our end, because obviously we've got a great DevOps cloud team that can help out with application modernization. We've got our resources that have expertise in all sorts of different hypervisors and hyperconverged solutions, as well as help with software as a service offerings for different applications.
Fantastic. Well, I know we're coming up on time here, but are there any final thoughts that you have that you could share with anyone listening to this particular podcast? How to approach this, guidance, any words of wisdom, if you will, that you can share with our audience here?
Slow down. Slow down. Honestly, we have so many clients that are just looking to shoot VMware, get them out of the data center, and move on with another solution. Slow down. There's probably things you're not thinking of as you're looking to just rip and replace with VMware. It is still it's the number one server virtualization technology for a reason. So slow down. Make sure you've thought of everything before you just rip and replace.
Those are some very wise words, and definitely from someone who's been there and done that before a few different times with our customers. Amazing words of advice. Devon, I want to thank you very much for being able to spend the time with me and share with our customers and prospects, everyone who's listening to this podcast, really what this is all about. Absolutely. There's a lot of hyperbole, a lot of hype. It is a fluid situation, seems to change by the week, if not by the hour, sometimes. And looking past it, slowing down, making wise decisions, having a methodical approach, all of those are some great, great processes and philosophies to have to be able to successfully navigate this change in really all of our worlds as we look forward, whatever the technology we end up choosing may be. So Devon, thank you again. We appreciate it. That wraps up today's Tech Podcast Series, Modern Infrastructure Edition. Stay tuned until next time. We'll see you again. I'm Christian Rowland. There's Devon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.